Hello, ladies and gentlemen. My name is David Tal, and today the BaLaGan connection comes from a very special place. This is a place where miracles happen. This is a place where gospels were taught. This is a place where people were healed. This is a place where people walked on the water. Today, the BaLaGan connection comes to you from the Sea of Galilee. So let's go a little bit further, get a little bit deeper out into the water, the place where all of the different things happen. Make sure you stay in the boat. Nobody gets out of the boats and starts walking, because if you do get out and start walking and you sink, I'm not coming in to get you. But the BaLaGan connection today is on the Sea of Galilee. Heading out to the northern part of the Sea of Galilee. We're in a tiny little boat, very similar in size probably to the fishing boats that Jesus would have sat on with his disciples when he spent time on the Sea of Galilee. The peace and the quiet that the Sea of Galilee brings in the morning is something that there's nothing like it anywhere else in the world. Though, a little bit about the geography, we're part of a big, deep rift that goes from Syria down to Africa. This is a freshwater lake. Actually, it's fed by the Jordan River a little bit to the north of us. It is 700 feet below sea level, and this calm and this quiet that you see right now is something that doesn't always stay like this. The boat captains know that sometimes the winds change, the waves come up, and you can have waves that are big enough actually to come over the side of this boat. And especially in the afternoon, especially in seasonal changes, okay, it's well known that the Sea of Galilee can be very, very treacherous. And that's going to connect to some of the things that we're going to be talking about as we go along from place to place. What I like about this situation in the morning is we can come out here and we can actually see where it all happens. This is where Matthew, Mark, Luke, and parts of John were actually written. This is where Jesus actually teaches the multitudes, teaches his disciples. This is where okay, let's see if we can do this. Look at this amazing coast. There's Mount Arbel right over there. You can see the road leading down from Nazareth. It touches this tiny little village of Magdala, where Mary Magdalene probably came from. Go along that, you can see a white building with a tower over there, and if you look closely in the background, you can see the town of Ginosau, where he healed the lady with the issue of blood. By the way, a lot of you have been here, a lot of you remember this place. That's the boat museum. Okay, does that raise some memories from some of you? Keep going along the shore, and in the crop of trees that you see behind me, you can actually see the church that sits on the spot where he multiplied the fish and the loaves. And a little bit to the right of that is a tiny little church, the Black Church of St. Peter's Primacy, where Jesus meets his disciples at the end of the book of John. And he actually sends them out to the world. That's where they have the barbecue, though we haven't had a barbecue this morning. Just above that and a little bit to the right, you see a little crop of trees with a big building inside, and I'm pointing it at right there, and if you kind of figure it out, that's the Mount of Beatitudes, where the most important sermon in the world was taught. And just to the right of the Mount of Beatitudes, down on the shoreline, you can see the tiny village of Capernaum. Capernaum is where Jesus sets up shop after he leaves Nazareth. Capernaum is where he meets the disciples for the first time and says to them, "Do you want to be fishers of men?" Capernaum is where it all ripples out from. This is where he meets the centurion. And again, all of these events, to the little bit to the right of that and a little bit above that is the village of Chorazim, where some of the disciples came from. If you go along to the right, let's see if we can pull you out over here and look out to the far right, you can see where the Jordan River comes down to the Sea of Galilee. That's the place where the village of Bethsaida stood. Capernaum, Chorazim, Bethsaida, the famous Jesus triangle where all of them came from. And what I'm trying to say is, this is where Jesus teaches the Gospels. And let's see if I can pull this off, because if I stretch out my left hand to Mount Arbel, and I stretch out my right hand to the Jordan Valley, I am holding 70% of the Gospels here between my hands right now. 70% of Matthew, Mark, and Luke, 70% of the healings, the teaching, the multitudes that were actually fed here. And well, right over there, right in front of where you see the boat right now, is probably where Peter got outside of the boat and started to walk. And I'm trying to say, this is the place where it all happens. Those of you who have been here know this feeling. Those of you who have not been here, this is a good time to come. By the way, share this with your friends. I mean, share the Sea of Galilee with their friends, because this is what makes it so important. The Sea of Galilee is where the Gospels hit the water, and from here ripples out to the rest of the world. From here, Jesus goes up to Jerusalem for the final act. From here, the disciples come back at the end of the book of John, and they sit on the shore right there and have breakfast with Jesus before he sends them out to the rest of the world. The Sea of Galilee is the place where it all connects together. And if that's not a BaLaGan connection, I don't know what is. Oh, there were a lot of BaLaGan. I mean, for instance, if I show and point you over here to the far right, let's see if we can get you to look at that. Right over there is where Jesus went when he wanted some peace and quiet. There was so much BaLaGan on this side of the shore that, you know, the people were kind of messing around, and he had to feed them all. And he said, I need to get away from it all. So he goes over to the other side, and on the other side, he was thinking he was going to get some peace and quiet. And on the other side, he has a different kind of BaLaGan. It's the BaLaGan with the pigs. Anybody remember the whole story of the deviled ham, where the demons go into the pigs and they go off the cliff? But what's I think is amazing is that the Sea of Galilee area is always a connector. And in the modern period, the present period, this place has been the scene of some major battles. The state of Israel, the Jewish people, the chosen people come back to the promised land after 2,000 years, and they reconnect to their land. But I'm sorry to say that it didn't come easy. 5 major wars were fought in order to bring this land together. And we fought a battle for this area in 1948. We fought battles in this area in 1967 and even in 1973, because the Sea of Galilee actually sits on the border between us and Syria. And the hills over there, the Golan Heights, if you probably heard, okay, belonged to Syria until 1967. Now, it was literally on the Sea of Galilee, and you understand that when the Syrians stood on top of that ridge and shelled the city of Tiberias and shot at fishing boats that were on the lake just like this, and you understand that that was a serious problem. But that was a serious problem for another reason, and I really believe these connections are amazing, because if you look over my right shoulder over here, you're going to see a little crop of trees, and right behind them is a pumping station. Israel comes back to this land in the modern period and realizes that this is desert. Now, if you've been here or you open up pictures of Israel, you're going to see Israel is not desert today. And the reason it's not desert is because we put a lot of energy into making the desert bloom. And David Ben-Gurion, the first prime minister, when he realized in 1949 that he couldn't have the nation that we needed to without major amounts of water, put together an amazing project in order to bring water from the Sea of Galilee to the rest of the country. The problem is we were a tiny little country. We didn't have any resources. We didn't have any money. We didn't have any taxes. I mean, we were Holocaust survivors trying to build a country here out of the middle of nowhere. What I think is amazing is how things connect, and how God sometimes provides in ways that you would never have believed. Because the national water carrier that literally pumps water out of the Sea of Galilee right behind me right here, and takes water from the Sea of Galilee all the way down to Beersheba. By the way, here's a nice connection. That means that the Jordan River that feeds the Sea of Galilee is pumped out and taken down to Beersheba. That means the Jordan River takes water from Dan, which is in the north, to Beersheba, which is in the south. But the money for the national water carrier, because where do we fund that? Actually, and I believe this is a divine connection, the water from the Sea of Galilee actually came from retributions that the state of Israel received from none other than Nazi Germany. At the end of World War II, when the world realizes what happens in the Holocaust, the German nation agrees to pay retribution to the Holocaust survivors. And the Holocaust survivors living here, that money was taken by the Israeli government and used to build the water carrier that watered the rest of the country. If that's not a connection, I don't know what is. And if you want to understand the Sea of Galilee and you want to understand the experience, I'm going to read from Mark chapter 6. And it says this: And immediately he made his disciples to get into the boat and go before him to the other side, to Bethsaida, which is over my left shoulder. And while he sent the multitude away, when he had sent them away, he departed to the mountain to pray. Now when evening came and the boat was in the middle of the sea, he was alone on the land. And he saw them straining at rowing, for the wind was against them. And now about the fourth watch, which is the middle of the night, the scariest part of the night, okay? He came to them walking on the sea and would have passed them by. And when they saw him walking on the sea, they supposed it was a ghost. I mean, yo, wow. And they all cried out, for they saw him and were troubled. But immediately he talked with them and said, "Be of good cheer. It is I. Do not be afraid." I'm looking from the Sea of Galilee at what's going on all over the world. And I gotta tell you, it is a big BaLaGan. It's things that we took for granted are falling apart. I'm a tour guide. I'm used to have a wonderful job. I mean, there were tourists here on a regular basis. I had so much work I didn't know what to do, and all of a sudden it's gone. Don't know what to do. The whole tourism business. Nobody's been on an airplane for the last year. Can you imagine that? The value system in the United States is kind of changing. I mean, so many things are changing as we speak. And what I'm trying to say is, it's a big BaLaGan. But what I need you to remember, that Jesus on this water said, "Look at me. Don't be troubled. It is I." And if there's anything I want you to take from this event today, is that there's nothing new. The waves on the Sea of Galilee have been happening for 2,000 years. The waves in the world have been happening for 2,000 years. But don't be troubled. This is all happening in the correct manner. Now, I'm not saying it's not scary. I'm not saying it's not a BaLaGan. But there's something to remember about waves on the Sea of Galilee being calmed by somebody who could walk on water. So, after all of this, I want to send some of this calmness out to the world. What we all need right now is, in the waves and in the BaLaGan that everything is happening, what we all need right now is somebody to walk by here on the water and say, "Be calm. It is I." Take that from the Sea of Galilee. And like I've said before, we're having an amazing time doing all of this, putting it all together. Please do me a favor, share this with as many of your friends. People that have been with you on the trip, people who have been on the Sea of Galilee would love to reconnect to the Sea of Galilee. And if you know somebody who hasn't been here, send him this movie, send him this link. He will enjoy seeing why the Sea of Galilee and why Israel on the whole is so important to past, present, and future. So hit the share, hit the subscribe. Let's see if we can do more of these. We want to do some more in Jerusalem. We want to do more on the Golan Heights and share as much of this BaLaGan country as we can with the rest of you out there. This is David Tal on the Sea of Galilee. Thank you for joining us.